decades, the establishment has told us to stop asking questions about the autism epidemic. Now, under President Trump, perhaps the truth will finally come to light. With Robert F. Kennedy Jr. confirmed as Secretary of Health and Human Services, he's wasting no time launching a federal investigation into the causes of autism and other chronic childhood diseases. And here with her thoughts, Pam Killeen, health and wellness coach, co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax, and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast. Pam, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, Richard. How are you?
Very well. So, what are your thoughts about Bobby Kennedy Jr. leading an investigation into causes of autism?
Well, I'm excited about it. This issue has to be uncovered. I think a lot of people know what the causes of autism are. It's just a lot of people don't want to be blamed for this. And by that, I mean, of course, the potential role that vaccines have played. And I mean excessive amounts of vaccines. When I say vaccines, the vaccine schedule has increased dramatically for the last several decades. And as you see the increased number of vaccines children are getting, you see an increase in incidence of autism. So he just simply wants to research any potential connection between the excessive use of vaccines and the potential trigger for the vaccines to be behind some of these symptoms. And then, of course, you have a perfect storm because he also wants to do a lot of research in terms of the processed food industry, which is, again, that's a whole Pandora's box as well. So you have a perfect storm, Richard. You have, unfortunately, the potential for these vaccines to be causing any kind of reaction in the body, whether it's because of certain ingredients in the vaccines or potentially because the vaccines are suppressing these children's immune systems. And then when they're eating nutrient deficient foods in the form of these processed foods, can they cope? Can they cope with all of this toxicity? And it seems to me that they're not coping very well with all of this toxicity. And I think a lot of these issues need to be addressed and researched because, unfortunately, you're going to have a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback from the vaccine industry. You're going to have a lot of pushback from the processed food industry. And these are two huge lobbies that don't want to lose any profits.
So just to be clear, are you saying that the vaccine, the schedule, which is increased, and I think the childhood schedule now with including boosters in the United States is something like, was it 80 different jabs?
It's huge.
Yeah. So are you saying that there is a direct causal relationship between the vaccine schedule and autism, or it's one of the contributing factors which include, you mentioned, certain ingredients, processed foods, other environmental contributors, I don't know, toxins in the atmosphere? Just to be clear, what are we saying here?
Well, I think a lot of people do want to believe that it's the vaccine. I think it's an overly simplistic statement to make. You also have these children on screens for hours and hours a day exposed to artificial light, which is going to suppress dopamine in the body as well. And that's going to create mood problems. So the one thing Robert Kennedy hasn't addressed is the artificial light, which is a separate issue. And the research in and around that is new and it's burgeoning. I think we're going to know more in a year or more. So Robert Kennedy hasn't talked about the artificial light and the lack of sunlight in these children's lives. And so when you factor in the artificial light, the lack of natural sunlight, you factor in the toxins coming in from the vaccines, you factor in the processed foods, and he wants to address even herbicides and pesticides and so on. So what you have is a toxic soup. And unfortunately, humans are just we're not designed to be exposed to all of this toxicity. So unfortunately, one of the reactions we could be seeing is something in terms of the autism or Asperger's, any kind of mood disorder for that matter. So I think it's too simplistic to blame vaccines. The schedule is outrageous. What Robert Kennedy really wants to do is he wants to uncover the science. He wants to look at good science, not at marketing-based science. And so when people are attacking Robert Kennedy and saying he's anti-vax, he's this, he's that, he's not. He's just pro-science. He needs to see good science. And what we've seen for so many decades now is marketing-based science behind a lot of these products that he wants to investigate.
The other thing that Bobby Kennedy Jr., he announced it during the campaign. Whether he follows through, we'll see. But he has pledged to ban pharmaceutical advertising on television. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, direct to consumer advertising for the pharmaceutical industry has been an absolute nightmare. It's been on TV and in print now for over 40 years. And are we any healthier for it? I mean, that's what we have to be asking ourselves. They were allowed to do direct to consumer advertising because they said the consumers are going to be so much better educated and these drugs are going to make them so much healthier. And that's how they got approved. That's how these ads got approved. And unfortunately, their claim that these ads are going to make people healthier is just not so. 40 years have gone by, Richard, and do you see like this health epidemic is still a problem? These ads haven't helped us at all.
Right. Well,
so they need to go. They need to go. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think the impact of MAHA will have here in Canada? Make America Healthy Again, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. as Health and Human Services Secretary. What reverberations do you expect to see, if any, on this side of the border?
Well, I'm hoping, number one, that there's going to be more transparency and better quality science, and I hope that does trickle up to Canada. But there's another implication behind what he's doing, and that has to do with advertisers on TV in general. So if you're the CEO of a company that makes really bad products, really unhealthy products, you don't want Robert Kennedy on your newscast. You don't want his name on your newscast. You don't want his name in your newspaper, especially if you have ads for Cheerios or, Kool-Aid or corn, whatever the case may be. They're not going to talk about Robert Kennedy if he's attacking these companies. And so advertising could change if the media steps up to the plate and says, you know what, our consumers are more important to us than our bottom line. So we are not going to censor this man. We are going to let this information come to the fore. And that is going to have huge repercussions, Richard, I believe, in terms of what we're seeing in print and on TV and on the radio and so on. I think the media is going to change a lot because of what Robert Kennedy is doing.
Pam Killeen is a health and wellness coach, co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax, and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast. And the website is pamkilleen.com, Pam, Killeen, pamkilleen.com. Pam, always a pleasure. Thank you. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks so much, Richard.